Now to our continuing coverage of the Nancy Guthrie disappearance.
She was 84 years old. She had no idea it would be her last meal at home. It was a perfectly ordinary Saturday night in Tucson, Arizona, January 31, 2026. The kind of winter evening where the desert air carries just enough chill to make you feel alive. Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, the mother of NBC's Today Show co-anchor Savannah Guthrie, sat down to dinner at her eldest daughter Annie's house. She laughed. She ate. She felt loved. Nobody at that table could have imagined what was about to happen, or at least, that is what they wanted the world to believe. Nancy Guthrie was not just any grandmother. She was a woman of deep faith, sharp wit, and fiercely independent spirit. Her friends knew her as the woman who never missed a Sunday virtual church service. Her neighbors knew her as the woman who kept her house immaculate and her schedule tight. She was healthy, alert, and by all accounts thriving. So when she vanished without a trace that same night, the world was stunned. Annie Guthrie and her Italian-born husband Tomaso, Chioni, an AP biology teacher at Basis Oro Valley in Tucson, were the last family members to see Nancy alive. According to their account, Tomaso drove Nancy back to her Catalina foothills home and dropped her off at approximately 9:48 p.m. Surveillance footage appeared to confirm the garage door closing around 9:50 p.m. Everything seemed fine. That was the story. But in the hours that followed, something deeply sinister unfolded inside that house. At 1:47 a.m., Nancy's doorbell security camera was physically disconnected, not from a power surge, not from a malfunction. Someone deliberately removed it. 25 minutes later, at 2:12 a.m., surveillance software detected motion near the home. And at 2:28 a.m., the most chilling detail of all, Nancy's pacemaker disconnected from the monitoring app on her phone, the moment investigators believed she was physically removed from her home. By Sunday morning, Nancy Guthrie had missed her virtual church service. Her friends raised the alarm. Police arrived to find a blood trail leading from her front door to the edge of the driveway. Her pacemaker had gone dark. Her cameras had been tampered with. And her 84-year-old body was gone, vanished into the Arizona night like she had never existed. What started as a missing persons case quickly became one of the most watched, most debated, and most disturbing kidnapping investigations America had seen in years. And at the center of it all was one haunting question. Who had Nancy Guthrie really spent her last known evening with, and what had truly happened behind closed doors? Like and subscribe to Unheard Confessions for more chilling true crime stories that the mainstream media won't tell you. When the ransom notes arrived, investigators knew this was no ordinary abduction. 3 days after Nancy Guthrie vanished, local Tucson news stations began receiving packages they were not prepared for. Ransom notes. Multiple ransom notes, sent to outlets including KOLD 13 News and KGUN, demanding millions of dollars in Bitcoin in exchange for Nancy's life. One note demanded $6 million and set a deadline. February 9, 2026, at 5:00 p.m. the clock was ticking. The Guthrie family went public in an emotional video statement. Savannah, Annie, and their brother Cameron stood together and begged for their mother's safe return. Savannah, who had abandoned her plans to cover the Olympics, spoke directly to whoever had taken her mother. "We received your message, and we understand." The family said they were willing to pay. They needed proof of life. They were desperate. The FBI, the Pima County Sheriff's Department, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and search and rescue teams descended on Tucson. Agents canvassed the neighborhood. They pulled digital evidence from every device. They reviewed every camera system within a mile radius. They found gloves near the scene that appeared to match those worn by a masked figure captured on a Nest camera at Nancy's front door. An armed, masked man estimated at 59 to 510, carrying a 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker backpack. But here is where the red flags started mounting. The ransom notes had been sent to media outlets, not just to the family privately. That was unusual. Genuine kidnappers with professional intent rarely operate that way. Investigators noted that the notes provided no verifiable proof that Nancy was alive. No video, No audio, no personal detail that only Nancy could confirm, just demands, just deadlines, just Bitcoin wallet addresses. And then the searches began focusing somewhere unexpected, the home of Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni, just 4 miles from Nancy's house. FBI agents and Pima County Sheriff's deputies were seen going door to door in their neighborhood. 3 unmarked vehicles parked in their driveway, flashes of cameras through the windows as investigators photographed the interior. Annie's car was towed away for forensic examination, and media commentators began asking aloud what many had been whispering privately. News anchor Ashley Banfield was among the first to say it publicly. Tomaso Chioni was a potential prime suspect. "They have towed Annie Guthrie's car," she reported on air. And there is some connection to Annie Guthrie's car and Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. Megyn Kelly went further, saying it would be irresponsible not to look at Chioni closely. He was the last known person to have dropped Nancy off, placing him alone with the elderly woman just hours before she disappeared forever. Like and subscribe to Unheard Confessions for more chilling true crime stories that the mainstream media won't tell you. One tiny Bitcoin transaction. One massive crack in the case. On February 11, 2026, 10 days after Nancy Guthrie disappeared, investigators released new surveillance images and video of the masked man seen outside her home. The footage was disturbing. The figure moved with quiet, deliberate calm. This was not a panicked opportunist. This was someone who had planned. But it was not the surveillance footage that sent shockwaves through the investigation that day. It was something far smaller, something most people might have dismissed as meaningless. At approximately 5:00 p.m. Arizona time, right as the ransom deadline passed, a Bitcoin transaction of approximately $152 was sent to the digital wallet address listed in the ransom notes. $152. In a case involving demands for $6 million. A transaction so small it almost seemed like noise, like a glitch, a prank, or a test. But investigators do not dismiss details in kidnapping cases. Every transaction on a blockchain is permanently recorded. Every wallet has a history. Every transfer leaves a trail. And that $152 was a trail that someone had not intended to leave, or perhaps it was a deliberate breadcrumb left by someone who wanted the case to stay alive without actually resolving it. The question immediately became, who sent it? Law enforcement did not publicly disclose the sender, but true crime analysts and blockchain investigators immediately began examining the wallet's activity. The ransom note wallet had been publicized in media. Anyone could theoretically send to it, but the timing was surgical. It arrived exactly at the deadline hour. It was as if someone was watching the clock. Then came the deeper question that began circulating among investigators and commentators alike. Was this $152 transaction connected to the family? Was it a test to see if the wallet was being monitored by law enforcement? Was it a signal between parties? Or was it evidence of someone within the inner circle trying to simulate ransom activity to throw investigators off the scent of a far more personal motive? Suspicion once again turned to those who had been in the room with Nancy that last night. Tomaso Chioni had been alone with Nancy in the car. He was the one who claimed to have dropped her off safely. His wife Annie's car had been seized. Their home had been searched twice. And now a mysterious Bitcoin transaction, timed to perfection, had entered a wallet tied to notes that many investigators privately doubted were genuine ransom communications at all. The plot was thickening at every turn. Like and subscribe to Unheard Confessions for more chilling true crime stories that the mainstream media won't tell you. The town of Tucson split in two, and the truth refused to surface. As weeks turned into months with no sign of Nancy Guthrie, the investigation entered a territory that is painfully familiar in high-profile missing person cases, the court of public opinion. And that court was brutal. Online, millions of armchair investigators dissected every detail. Tomaso Chioni's background became a subject of intense scrutiny. An Italian-born man who had lived in the United States for over 20 years. A biology teacher. a bassist and vocalist in a local rock band called Early Black, a band that, disturbingly, had released an album years earlier titled Life Lavelle Murder. That detail spread across social media like wildfire, seized upon as darkly symbolic even as rational voices cautioned against reading too much into an old band name. True crime commentators pointed to the timeline relentlessly. The doorbell camera was removed at 1:47 a.m., roughly 3.5 hours after Tomaso claimed to have dropped Nancy off. If she had truly been safely inside when he left, who disabled that camera? Who had the knowledge of where the camera was mounted? Who knew the house well enough to move through it in the dark? These were questions no official statement had answered. Meanwhile, a California man named Derek Calella was arrested for sending fake ransom texts to Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni, demanding Bitcoin. "Did you get the Bitcoin? We're waiting on our end for the transaction," he had allegedly texted them. Calella was charged with extortion and using anonymous telecommunications to harass the family. He confessed to finding their contact information online. Investigators confirmed his messages were unrelated to the actual kidnapping, a predator capitalizing on a family's tragedy. On February 10, a person of interest was detained during a traffic stop in Rio Rico, Arizona, roughly 60 miles south of Tucson. Search warrants were executed. A gray Range Rover was seized from a nearby Culver's restaurant. DNA from gloves found at the scene was traced, but it led back to a local restaurant worker with no connection to the case. Every promising lead seemed to dissolve. Through it all, Annie and Tomaso maintained their composure publicly. They cooperated with authorities. They made emotional appeals alongside Savannah, and yet the suspicion did not die, it grew. A no trespassing sign eventually appeared on the front of their Tucson home. It was a sign of a family under siege. But for those following the case closely, it raised another question. What were they afraid the public might see? 3 months later, Nancy Guthrie is still missing. And the questions grow louder. By April 2026, Nancy Guthrie had been missing for over 78 days. There had been no confirmed sighting, no proof of life, no arrest, no resolution, just an open wound in the heart of a family, a community, and a nation that had watched one of America's most beloved journalists go through the unthinkable. Officially, the Pima County Sheriff had cleared all of Nancy's close family members, including Annie Guthrie and Tomaso Chioni, as suspects. Sheriff Chris Nano stated plainly, "The family has been nothing but cooperative and gracious and are victims in this case. To suggest otherwise is not only wrong, it is cruel." Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer backed that position publicly, citing Annie's stable financial situation, her community standing, and Tomaso's 2 decades of life in America as a respected teacher. "They do just fine. They're not in any money problems. They have 1 child. They have a beautiful life from all accounts," she said, and yet the questions refused to lie down. The $152 Bitcoin transaction, timed to the minute of the ransom deadline, has never been fully explained publicly. The true origins of the ransom notes remain disputed. The surveillance footage of the masked man has not led to an identified suspect. DNA from hair strands recovered at the scene is still being analyzed by a genetic genealogist who has called it a potential breakthrough. And Google, at the request of investigators, was attempting to extract additional footage from Nancy's home cameras as recently as February 18. What happened to Nancy Guthrie on the night of January 31, 2026? Who removed that doorbell camera at 1:47 in the morning? Who sent $152 to a Bitcoin wallet address listed in a ransom note, and why? These are not questions with clean answers. They are questions that haunt this case like a shadow that will not move. True crime cases of this magnitude often come down to patience. A slip of the tongue, a digital footprint overlooked, a witness who finally decides the truth matters more than loyalty. The FBI tip line, 1-800-CALL-FBI, remains active. The $50,000 reward for information leading to Nancy's recovery still stands, and Savannah Guthrie continues to wake up every morning not knowing where her mother is. Nancy Guthrie was an 84-year-old woman of faith who loved her family and never missed a Sunday service. She deserves justice. She deserves to be found. And whoever is responsible for her disappearance, whether a masked stranger, a hired operative, or someone far closer to home, deserves to face every consequence the law can deliver. The $152 Bitcoin transaction may have seemed small, but in this case, the smallest detail could be the one that cracks it wide open. Someone knows what happened that night, and sooner or later the blockchain never lies. Like and subscribe to Unheard Confessions for more chilling true crime stories that the mainstream media won't tell you.